I'm a storyteller. I use puppets sometimes, other props to tell stories because it just enhances my storytelling. I enjoy telling all kinds of stories, from the epics, from the Indian folk tales, legends, world tales, multicultural folk tales, humorous stories, spooky tales, mathematical tales, environmental stories, you name it. I have a story for, I guess, almost for everything. Just love telling stories, and I intersperse my stories with a lot of song. For example, the puppets that you see here is about an Indian folk tale about the clever washerwoman and goddess Lakshmi. She is goddess Lakshmi here, and this is about a king and queen. So I introduce this story like this. सुन लो सुनाती हूँ तुमको कहानी, होशियार धोबिन और लक्ष्मी की कहानी. That's just one way of introducing my story. My stories have a lot of music. They are very content based. There is a hidden message in each and every one of my stories, be it a story of compassion, a story of courage, overcoming fear, a story, just a humor, a story about solving a riddle, or like the clever washerwoman here, how she outwits goddess Lakshmi and gets her to stay with her for years and years. In the beginning, when I started way back in 1996, I started making the puppets myself and my friends helped me. I started only with glove puppets. I'm a self-taught glove puppeteer. As you see, these are glove puppets which go into my hand. I'm not a trained puppeteer. It's just over the years I've evolved using glove puppets. I use sometimes stick puppets, finger puppets, and sometimes the marionettes. I just bring them in when I tell the story. But usually I'm with a glove puppet. These puppets were made by me initially. If you see them, they are very Indian. They are accessorized, they are dressed up in Indian clothes. But now I get my puppets done by a professional puppeteer. For example, this puppet. She is also Parvati in the story of Ganesha's birth. She also becomes Lakshmi in the story of the clever washerwoman. Now she is being done by a professional puppeteer who does puppets for me now. I tell stories for all varied age groups, right from 3-year-olds up to 12. And I've also been telling stories for young adults, for senior citizens, for adults, because I tell stories at museums, at social clubs, in the bookshops, mainly for children. I started telling for children, but then everybody enjoys listening. So I enjoy telling it to the senior citizens. I volunteered for 1 year at Dignity Foundation, and they enjoyed the stories thoroughly. Like I said, I'm a storyteller. I haven't written any books, but I pick up books. Some of the books tell me, read me. You have to tell my story. I'm very passionate about some books. For example, this book written Seasons of Splendor by Madhur Jaffrey. The story, The Lakshmi and the Clever Washerwoman, is from there. Somehow that story appealed to me, and I've dressed it up in my own style by adding Bollywood songs in it. For example, in the end, when the washerwoman invites Lakshmi into her home, they both break out into a song. For example, I can just give you a little glimpse into that song. आज है दिवाली, वो दीपों की दिवाली, मेरे घर आई आज खुशी खुशी, पॉवर्टी चली गई, लक्ष्मी घर आई, दिल मेरा मचला पूछो वाई वाई, चाय में डूबी बिस्कुट हो गई, ओ मैं तो ऐवी 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 लुट गई. It's just an example that I engage children by, interspersing with Bollywood music. Now, other stories that I select, for example, are spooky tales. I just told spooky tales for children under 10, just for Halloween. Now children love scared stories, spooky tales, tales about ghosts and tales about, different noises. It's also getting the children engaged. For example, the bare branches of the trees were swaying in the wind. So the children are invited to put their hands up and the fingers like the bare branches, and they sway by making noise. And the dry leaves skittering down to the floor, so making a sound like chick, 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 chick. And there's a sound coming from the graveyard. Turn me over. Now these stories are very interactive. There is the audience participation. I tend to select stories which involve a lot of audience participation, because stories just by one person telling a story is no fun. You need the audience to respond. That makes the story more exciting.